Here we go. Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, and good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. This is WeatherBrains episode number 772. It is the pre-show, the magical, marvelous time where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and we say outrageous things. And we've already got Nick on the show here. Nick, welcome to WeatherBrains.
Happy to be here.
So if you need to say anything outrageous, if you need to share a boring personal story or a humorous anecdote, we've got 8 minutes to do that because this part does not go on the audio produced part that goes out to the world. So this is just for those people that are watching the YouTube side. So, and quite frankly, some of our best content is during the pre-show. So, but what I'm going to do real quick is get us on the various websites and on the TV channels and everything else we have to do here. So let me get the embed code in place.
I'll be right back.
And okay. And so the embed code is up. And let's see what else here. I think we're good. And we've actually sent out I don't have to invite everybody. They're just going to come on the show here. I hope they're not expecting an email because you're not going to get one tonight. They got one like last week. So Nick is in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's cold, man. It's like cold in this room. And I have had no power because of one of your stinking hurricanes for 4.5 days at my house. We're still out. I blame it on you.
I've got a group of friends who constantly joke that we don't actually hunt hurricanes. We just fly out and turn on the hurricane machine.
Yeah, exactly.
And more hurricanes.
There's something up with you guys. But the one that got me was Zeta. The core. Ooh, wait a minute. Shocking news from my wife. We have power. All caps with exclamation points. I mean, she's look. I don't know. What's the longest, Nick, you've been without power in your life? Commercial power.
So I grew up in West Virginia, and I think it was 1998 that we got a pretty bad ice storm that rolled through, and I think we were without power for almost a week or something.
Wow.
Yeah. I was just a kid, so it's tough to remember.
Yeah, so it just came back. Bill Murray, we just got power at our house for the first time in 4.5 days. So, and my wife says the smoke detectors are beeping everywhere. I told her when everything comes back up, there's going to be some anomalies with the electronics and everything else. But we made it through the cold night last night in there, the cold, dark night. But I think for me, this is the longest outage, and I'm 100 years old. We had a big ice storm in 82, and I think we were without power for 4 days. We're at 4.5 with this, so I think this is the longest.
You still have no power, James?
We up until 1 minute ago, we had no power.
Oh,
it just came back. So my wife is ecstatic, but then she says, now the smoke detectors are beeping everywhere. So, that chirping thing they make.
Well, we'll take that problem. Well, I knew when the ASOS went out at the Shelby County Airport, we were in trouble the other night. I was like,
but no, I think they've done Nick in our state alone where I am, we had 555,000. And I think the number of outages, they are down to 40-something thousand. And to me, that is a remarkable job of rebuilding infrastructure in that amount of time. I mean, and this was late Wednesday night, early Thursday of last week. I mean, and it's true, they do have people from Maine and from Canada and, all these other linemen in place down here. But what those guys are doing out there in the field is just stunning work. And of course, nobody understands the challenges that they face, but they're out there in horrific conditions, dealing with snakes and woolly
County,
boogers
the
and
entire
everything else.
county was without power, James. The entire county. And that's a good 70 miles inland.
Yeah. And again, I think what happened in our case, we had some damage that affected about 200 homes. And understandably, the power company, that they're going to get the issues fixed that will bring up 5,000 people instead of 200 people. So, and again, I am not faulting them at all. I mean, and listen, there's a lot of people that have trees through their homes and they've lost their homes. And we don't have that. All we have is power outage. And if that's the only problem we have, we don't have a problem. So I'm excited. I've not been able to do television on the morning show from the house, and I had to do the Bryant-Denny Stadium Jumbotrons, the Alabama football game. Normally I'm there at the stadium, but this year I'm not at the stadium. They're trying to keep people out because of the COVID stuff. And so I typically do it on the green wall at my house, but with no lights, I can't do that. So I came up here to do it Saturday. But anyway, Jen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good.
All right.
Say hello to Nick.
Yes, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hello. Nice to meet you all.
Of course, I have to ask the proverbial question: is that your real hair?
It is all natural.
If I had hair like that,
barbers charge me double.
This is the hot guy of hurricanes, James.
There you go.
I'm telling you, man.
Yeah.
So are you married?
I'm not. I do have a girlfriend, but no.
Okay, I know what's coming your way.
I saw that look, Jen. Stop it.
I know. We all sighing in sadness here. That's all right.
No, Nick is a rising star in the Weather Enterprise on social media. I mean, I'm telling you, he is a star. Yeah, he's not a rising star. He's a star. So it is. We have had multiple requests to get you on this show. So, now I'm getting Synology. Your connection has been resumed to your Synology disk station at the house. So it really is. The network is up. That's exciting.
That's good.
That's because that's the other thing. If your power comes back, does your network come back? I've got AT&T fiber. And if I'm seeing the Synology disk station coming up, then that's a good thing. I was I've never had that stuff down for like 4 or 5 days. So you never know what's going to happen when it comes back. So hopefully it's all good. All right. Dang, man, this Ada is looking nasty.
It is. God,
oh yeah,
that's bad.
It's got the old buzzsaw look now.
Well, it looks like the Philippines typhoon is what it looks like.
2 in 2 days. That's crazy.
Nick, are you going in there tomorrow?
Recon.
So they're just sending the P3s in, and I'm still on the G4 cruise for the rest of the hurricane season, it looks like. So I will not be flying into Ada. Now, if it ends up manifesting into whatever else later this week, next week, then we'll probably fly that on the jet at least.
Yeah, this thing might be around until January. So, no, this doesn't look good. All right, so I think I know that Aubrey is out. Nate is here. Got Troy in the house, and so I think we're good. So let's get this sucker started.
Are you introducing Nate?
Sure.
Okay, good. All right.
As long as my 2-year-old decides not to reject bedtime again.
No.
I'll be your backup.
You'll come
to
over.
Reject bedtime?
If I hear crying, I'll
just come on over.
Hopefully I can stay awake. It's still 10 o'clock for me. I'm not used to the time change.
I'm going to have to bail after we chat with Nick, but I can hang out until then. I've also got company in town. I don't know if you can see the guest bed here behind me.
Yeah, let's just end early tonight.
What's the deal
here on time tonight?
With a bunch of old people here or what?
Yeah.
There's a little thing tomorrow. There's a little holiday tomorrow.
Jesus.
Well, if Brian Peters were still on the show, he wouldn't be here at all.
Right. He's a poll
Nick
worker
Underwood is
watcher.
the host now. All right, Nick, you just took over.
Happy to be here. I'm in charge.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
There you go.
Be careful of that,
No.
Nick. Yeah, be really careful about that.
James has been relegated to the last position. Did you get a penalty, James?
So I get the internet and power back at my house, and then it goes out here within the same minute. How does that happen?
Karma.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So Nate, I can introduce
Hey, the
Beth
Bill.
if you want first, and then I'll toss to you.
Okay.
If she gets her audio and video worked out here.
Let's get this sucker going here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, hang on. False start. Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains episode number 772. This is the weekly show that is all about weather, the world's oldest weather podcast. Started this thing back in 2006. This is before Jen. This is before you were born. But Jen, welcome. What's happening in Ohio?
It got cold. It's quiet though. We're about to get warm again. I'm liking it. I'm fine with the 60s and the 70s. We had a little bit of snow here on Sunday. My mom's birthday is Halloween, so we celebrated that. And then we had a little celebration the day after. And then I'm walking outside and it's snowing. So I'm not ready for that yet. But it looks like the 60s return and just quiet, kicking back here with not a whole lot happening, which is fine by me.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was looking at the satellite imagery across the United States. I mean, goodness, you could fly from like Jacksonville, Florida today to Denver to almost San Francisco and not find a single cloud in the sky, which is, bodes well for the election day. So, Troy, the sun must have been shining in Austin, Tejas today.
It was shining. We up to about 77 or 78 degrees. I'll take that any day of the year. And morning lows down in the 40s, actually upper 30 here and there. So, but real good weather-wise, and looks like pretty stagnant weather pattern for us for the next week or so. And then we'll wait on that West Coast system to see what it does by late in the weekend and early next week. But enjoying the sunshine here.
Down here in the deep south, it was cold this morning, and we have had no power at my house since last Wednesday night, thanks to Hurricane Zeta. And just literally as Nick and I started talking on the pre-show, my wife texted me, "We have power." So there's exciting news in the Span household, but right below that, the next note says, "But the smoke detectors are beeping everywhere." So I warned her. I warned her when this comes back, there might be some anomalies going on in the house, but no, the linemen, goodness gracious, they do not get the praise they deserve. And I'm beginning to see more of that, which is a good thing. You typically see all these haters, these jamokes on the face bag, griping and stuff. I mean, these men are away from their families. They're in some cases 1,000 miles away from their home, helping people out from Canada or Maine or wherever. And what they do, this is dangerous work. This is, this ain't easy.
Now you said men. Just want to make sure we know there's some women out there too.
That's
working.
True. I was corrected recently, and then there are women that do work on the line. So
that's right.
Thanks to all of the women and men that are out there working, and especially to the ones that restored my power here. Nate, what's the longest you've been without power? This is about 5 days for us.
Oh, that's a good question. Hugo knocked us out for 3 days. I've actually been pretty lucky. I think Hugo's probably 3 days was the longest back in '89, growing up. The most interesting power outage story I have actually involves me not losing power. But during Hurricane Fran, I lived on campus at NC State, was doing my undergrad there. It came through in September of '96. And there's something about the power grid at NC State University. It is impervious to everything but squirrels. So we'd have tornadoes come through, hurricanes come through, the power never went off. And during Fran knocked out power for like the eastern third half of North Carolina for weeks, plural. It was insane, but State never lost power. And so when we started back in class the following week, so it hit Thursday night, Friday morning, we went back to class starting, I think, Wednesday the following week. You could tell the kids like me who lived on campus from the kids who lived off campus based on what they complained about. They complained about not having had a hot shower in the better part of a week, not having power, not having had a hot meal. I complained about not having cable. So I'm surprised that university housing doesn't use that in their, their literature that, everywhere else is going to lose power, but we are not going to lose power here. And with the exception of the occasional squirrel jumping into the substation on West Campus, it was pretty good.
we stoned people for saying that during the superstorm in 1993.
Yeah, I'm with you. So
I think
Bill Murray. Did you lose power at all?
Yeah.
No, we never even blinked. I think we've had so many little power instances this year that all the things have been cleaned up. So we were really lucky, but the main wind went east of us. We just were. I saw those fingers on the radar, James, and I knew Shelby County was going to get blasted. And it was
it was rough down this way, and especially south of where I am. But anyway, Nate, Bill, who's going to introduce our guest here? Forget all this malarkey here. Go.
Yeah, I'll introduce our guest panelist tonight. She's one of the organizers of the annual Indiana Storm Chasers Convention in Indianapolis. She's a co-owner and consulting meteorologist at Thermodynamic Solutions, TDS Weather. She issues daily forecasts for various industries in the Midwest, including snow removal, landscaping, hospitals, sporting, outdoor venues, golf courses, agriculture, and more. Beth Carpenter, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, when we scheduled you, we thought we were going to have a conference to talk about, but I guess that kind of fell apart. But we didn't want to not have you here tonight. So
we held on as long as we could, but it ultimately came down to our speakers and their employers saying, no, we don't want you guys traveling out of state right now. So we kind of made the best decision for everybody to hold off, and we'll just have our 10th anniversary event next year. And hopefully we can go even bigger and better now.
Well, good. Well, we'll talk about that in just a little bit and some of the cool things that you do. But we're going to deputize you tonight as a panelist.
That's
and
fine.
I know you brought lots of questions tonight for the hot guy of hurricanes. And I'll turn it over to Nate to introduce him to us.
Thanks, Bill. Our guest tonight is somebody, if you're on Twitter and follow any sort of weather accounts, you've seen some of his work. And if you've watched any newscasts recently where they've shown pictures of airplanes and hurricane hunters, you might have seen some of his work there too. He is a West Virginia born and raised and schooled aerospace engineer for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's hurricane hunters, not to be confused with the United States Air Force Reserve's hurricane hunters. Different thing. We'll talk about that. Since 2016, he's been on NOAA's fleet of aircraft doing all sorts of stuff, not just hurricanes. And we'll get into that too. He's seen 16 hurricanes since he started doing hurricanes, including Irma, Florence, and Dorian. He's also working on a master's degree at the University of South Florida. And he is a frequent tweeter, sends a lot of cool pictures and a lot of behind the scenes stuff about the NOAA hurricane hunters. Nick Underwood, welcome to the program.
Very happy to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Good to have you here. I want to start off by talking about the NOAA hurricane hunters and the Air Force hurricane hunters, because I think it was actually news to me. I'd been in the business an embarrassingly long time before I realized that NOAA even had hurricane hunters. And as a matter of fact, it was a NOAA P3 that I set foot in first before one of the C-130s. Tell us a little bit about NOAA's hurricane hunter group and how y'all are similar to and different from the folks that fly out of Biloxi.
Yeah, so we get confused with one another by folks all the time. And so our office is under the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. We're the Aircraft Operations Center for NOAA. So we have a fleet of 9 aircraft that we use for hunting hurricanes and studying climate change and tracking marine mammals and all of this different stuff. Our hurricane hunting aircraft, we have 2 of the Lockheed WP-3D Orions. Those rolled off the assembly line in the mid-1970s. And then we also have our Gulfstream 4, which is our high altitude surveillance jet that is up flying above, around, and in front of these storms, gathering that high altitude data. And so the P3s act a lot like the Air Force Reservist C-130s. They're flying down between, about 8,000 to 12,000 feet above the water, crashing right through the eye wall. and, collecting all of that in situ intensity data actually within the storm environment. And so, we are funded through Noaa. That's where our money comes from. The Air Force Reservists, the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron, they're DOD. So they have, I think, 10 C-130s. They have way more hurricane handling airplanes than we do. But we all do a similar mission. So when a tropical storm or a hurricane starts to form, a lot of times the National Hurricane Center will task either us or the Air Force to go fly a low-level invest. So, down at 1,500 feet, sometimes 5,000 feet, to really just see if there's, the right conditions there for the storm to start forming. A lot of times the Air Force will get those low-level invests, and then once the storm is formed and it's a tropical storm hurricane, that's when we usually start to get tasked to go collect data. And, we're all collecting data. The primary instruments that we use are the dropsondes, which is, my job on the aircraft. And so the C-130s can launch dropsondes, the P-3s can launch dropsondes, the C-130s can launch AXBTs, airborne expendable bathythermographs, to gather that ocean temperature data. We can do the same. The one main tool that separates us from the Air Force is the tail Doppler radar, which is on the back of the P-3s in this big bulb. And it's a radar dish that spins around, and as we're flying through the storm, it's getting slices of radar imagery from the sea surface up to the cloud tops. So it's kind of like getting an MRI of the storm. And so a lot of times we get tasked, it's for TDR missions to get that data to send to the National Hurricane Center, in addition to launching the dropsondes and anything else. But again, they do pretty much the same mission that we do. We're all out there flying these storms, just gathering data for the National Hurricane Center to, keep folks like you safe and let James know when his power is going to go out.
And you mentioned that, at least for the next little bit, you have been on the Gulfstream 4 plane, and that's a fairly new thing, if I'm not mistaken, relatively new. It's not something they've been doing as long as the C-130s and the P-3s. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, relatively new in the same frame that I am relatively new. So I was born in 1992. I think the G4 came online for Noaa in 1996.
Yeah. I was in college at this place when they started it, which is, it's relative, but they've been doing the hurricane years longer than that. But anyway.
So like I said, the P-3s rolled off the assembly line in the mid 1970s. I think Kermit came off the assembly line in 1975 and started flying storms in 1976. The Gulfstream 4 came online in the late 90s, and since then has been doing that high altitude surveillance mission. So the P-3s and the C-130s can't get up to 45,000 feet, but you need that high altitude data to really get those steering currents, to really get a full picture of the environment that these storms are in. And that aircraft has really led to the track forecasts for these storms improving over the last couple of decades, such that I think Delta made landfall just a few miles from where it was forecast to 72 hours in advance. So that's excellent. We're still getting better with the intensity modeling, but certainly the Gulfstream has really helped that track forecast improve over the last few years.
And by Gulfstream, you mean the jet and not the ocean current that runs.
Yes, of course. The Gulfstream 4, free advertising for Gulfstream, I guess.
That's right.
Gonzo, you can call it Gonzo, Noaa 49.
Yeah, and the other P3 her name is?
So we've got Kermit and Miss Piggy are the two P3s, and then Gonzo is our Gulfstream 4. We do have a new jet coming online sometime in the next few years. It may or may not get a Muppet name. I have no idea.
It'd be sad if it doesn't. It needs to. I think it ought to be Grover.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
Keep the G thing going there. Tell us a little about your career path and how we'll come back to the hunting hurricanes and everything else,
Mm-hmm.
but tell us about how a guy from West Virginia gets interested in flying through weather and doing Arctic missions and this sort of thing.
So what's funny is that 5 years ago, I didn't know that this job existed. And now I'm 4 years into it, and it's tough for me to imagine doing anything else right now. So, I was born and raised in southern West Virginia, not exactly known for its hurricane activity or its Arctic sea ice activity.
Although there is a town called Hurricane in West Virginia. So
and it is pronounced Hurricane. Excellent job. Right. Yes. I don't know why they pronounce it that way. I cannot trace the etymology.
That's how my grandmother pronounced it.
Yeah, we had a governor here in North Carolina who pronounced them hurricanes too. So I'm comfortable. Anyway, sorry, didn't interrupt.
No, it's fine. Shout out to my friends from Hurricane. So born and raised in southern West Virginia. When I was in 8th grade, I went on a family vacation to Cape Canaveral, Florida, and saw my first rocket launch. And I thought, as a wide-eyed 13-year-old, wow, I want to do that. I want to be involved with that. And so I got into high school, got interested in physics, figured, hey, if I'm going to go to rockets, aerospace engineering sounds like a great path. That's what Homer Hickam did, another southern West Virginia boy. And so I went to West Virginia University, got my bachelor's in aerospace engineering, started pursuing a master's degree in it. That didn't pan out. Ended up job hunting for a few months, wound up as a flight test engineer for the United States Navy, working with F-18s and F-35s. And this was in Patuxent River, Maryland. And I was only at that job for about a year before I realized that I wanted to do something more science focused with my degree. And so I started applying for jobs at NASA, at Noaa, got offered a position at both. And my end game, my long-term goal is to be an astronaut. It's one of my long-term goals. Long-term goal is to be an astronaut. And the advice I got from an astronaut on how to be an astronaut was don't sit behind a desk. And so I had these two job offers from NASA and Noaa, and I looked at them and I said, well, which one of these gets me out from behind a desk? And it was the one that had me in a hurricane sometimes. And to be fair, I still have somewhat of a desk on the aircraft, but it's in a hurricane. So I think that counts as something.
It's a window seat, so it counts.
Yeah, exactly. It's different. And so, like I said, 5 years ago, didn't know this job existed, had never had a thought in my mind of getting into hurricane hunting or anything like that. And now, here I am. I've flown 16 hurricanes, a handful of tropical storms. And it's just one of those things where, life takes you in directions you least expect it to. But this one has worked out so far, so I'm happy with it.
Is Homer Hickam sort of a hero in West Virginia by that?
Yeah, certainly so. Homer Hickam
and everything he did.
Chuck Yeager, also southern West Virginia boy. So I mean, there's something about those hills that draws people to the aerospace world, I guess.
Nick Saban too. There, Nate.
Yeah.
He's more from Fairmont. That's a little further north, but.
So do you just do hurricanes, or you do more than just hurricanes, right? So more than just tropical stuff.
More than just hurricanes. And we get asked that question all the time at air shows and things like that when we're showing off the aircraft and saying, oh, we hunt hurricanes. And then people say, well, what do you do the rest of the year? Yeah. And so, like I said, we've got 9 different aircraft. So we've got the 2 P3s, we've got the jet, we've got 4 Twin Otters, which are twin engine propeller planes. We've got a King Air, and then we've got a Turbo Commander. And all of these aircraft are constantly out flying different missions. So the Twin Otters, we send one up to Alaska every summer to do some Arctic sea ice surveys, to do some seal and walrus surveys. We also send them up north to do snow surveys. So they'll fly along, and they've got a fancy laser instrument that measures the water content in the snowpack, which allows us to predict flooding in the spring. We track whales, right whales specifically, because there's only about 300 left in the wild. And so we've got a project where they fly circles around whales all day. The heavy aircraft, the P3s and the jet, during the wintertime, we've gone to Ireland the last few years to chase North Atlantic cold fronts. We've got a project called GravD, where it's for the geodetic survey. They're flying around, rebaselining where sea level is around the country. We've got an atmospheric rivers project that I was on earlier this year. So, I mean, there's tons of research. We also chase tornadoes in the springtime with the P3s out in the Midwest. So I've not been on that project. No offense to the state of Kansas, but I really just don't have much desire to go to the state of Kansas. You could say
there's not much there.
Well, there you go.
I've storm chased out there several times, and probably one of the most boring drives I've done across the country is Kansas.
You could say I'm a little sore from being a West Virginia basketball fan and having to play Kansas every year, but
so it's nothing to do with the people of Kansas, more.
Yeah, it's nothing with the people of Kansas, more just the Kansas University basketball team.
Fair enough.
And for those people in Kansas that are listening, it's nick@nickunderwood.com. That's the email address for the hate mail. Yeah.
Actually, it's funny that you mentioned your desire to be an astronaut, because I always wondered why your Twitter handle is the Astro Nick.
Mm-hmm.
And now I know, since most
playing
of
the
the
long
astronauts are like, yeah, that's right, because a lot of the astronauts are like Astro_Kate, Astro_Bill, and everything. So
exactly. So if I figure if I already have the handle, it just makes it easier for NASA to transition in.
They're just already thinking. So
play the long game.
There you go. In terms of flying through hurricanes and whatnot, I actually had a question, and I believe I answered it correctly on Twitter today, but I'll ask you: is it bumpy on the airplanes when you're flying through a hurricane? Not a job for people who don't like turbulence.
Not a job for people who don't like turbulence, for sure. The P3s are certainly more bumpy than the jet. And that's because they're down at 10,000 feet, flying right through the worst of it. That flight is kind of like being on a wooden roller coaster. So it's a lot of vibration. It's a lot of getting bounced around. It is certainly a dynamic and exciting environment. The jet, little less turbulent. Sometimes those cloud tops can really reach up to our flight level, and we have to do a fair amount of diverting sometimes. And sometimes we do get into some pretty decent turbulence, even up at 45,000 feet. So I know my first hurricane flight was into Hurricane Matthew in 2016. I was not physically or mentally prepared for what I was about to go through. So it was a night flight. It was a 2 a.m. takeoff. And, I had found out the morning prior that I was going to be on that flight as an observer. I had no responsibilities on this flight. I was just there to go along, see what the folks who have, done the job that I do now for years do. And so I, was told, hey, go home, get your 12 hours of rest. You're going to be on the flight tonight. And of course, I just slept a full night, and you go home and, it's in your mind, oh, I'm going to be in a hurricane in 12 hours. So there's no sleeping to be done. And so by the time the flight rolled around, I was exhausted. And I figured, oh, this is going to be exciting. I'm going to enjoy it as much as I can. First 2 hours, I was fine. After that, probably the worst 6 hours of my life. I needed
and you've done it 15 more times in just hurricane.
Yeah, exactly. I think I have, I think my tally is 62 pennies now. So that's 62 times in and out of hurricane.
Why'd you go back though?
Well, so that's the thing is that, I was.
Because I definitely would not. Not a chance. I would never ride one of those.
Again, it's the long game. It's the
long game
at the end. Re-entry, you got to watch re-entry. It's kind of bumpy.
So, I was certainly getting the mileage out of the airsick bags. And the first couple passes, it's a night mission. So it's just dark. And so, there's not much to see out the window, but I think it was the third pass through. The sun had finally come up, and, I'm not having a great time. But we break into the eye, and, you can actually see out the window now. And this was when Matthew was a Category 4 storm. And I just look out the window and I thought, wow. In that moment, like the past few hours just didn't matter, because here I was, and this was, the most incredible thing I'd seen up to that point. And so I was able to compose myself for a few minutes, take all of that in and enjoy it for what it was, snap a few pictures for the Instagram, back into the eye wall, back to having a bad time. But it was that moment of seeing my first eye that just got me hooked to it, and I said, this is going to be something I'm going to enjoy.
So how's
And
the
your
turbulence
role-
now?
Okay, sorry.
The turbulence now,
Doesn't bother you?
it doesn't really bother me at all.
Because I saw the video you posted earlier this summer. You're like flying out of your seat. Like, there's no way.
So, we're always strapped in, and we do have 5-point harnesses on those seats. I tend to just use the lap belt because I've got to move around and grab drop sons and reach the launch tube and everything. But we stay strapped in to stay safe. But yeah, the turbulence now, I mean, every hurricane's different, but you really get used to the turbulence.
I've heard that the weaker or the developing storms, the ones that are sort of intensifying, tend to be bumpier than a steady state like Cat 3, Cat 4 that seems to have sort of peaked and was hanging out. Is that a fair assessment, or did I mishear that?
That's a pretty fair assessment. And I think it's because those tropical storms and the Cat 1 hurricanes are still, like most of us, trying to get their life together and trying to just figure things out. And the more established, Category 4, Category 5 storms, all the winds are flowing the same direction. They'll still give you a good bump. So, I mean, we're always on our toes with these things. But certainly it's a bumpier ride in the weaker storms.
Your undergrad is in aerospace engineering, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how does that fold into drop signs through the hole in the bottom of the airplane? I mean, in terms of like the career path, how does that, because I would think an aerospace engineer, you're either building the plane or maybe even flying it, right?
Right. So I would say that the job is about a 60-40 split as far as office time versus on the aircraft time goes. So when I'm in the office, I'm doing what I was hired to do, which is be an aerospace engineer. So structural mechanics, thermodynamics, aerodynamics, all that stuff I learned in school. My job as an aerospace engineer is to get new science instruments and new systems mounted safely and securely onto these aircraft. So, I mean, every other week, a scientist comes to us and says, hey, I've got this weird science instrument and I would love to put it on this airplane. And so it's my job to figure out how to do that and how it's going to interplay with all these different systems and how we can do it safely. So that's the engineering side of things. That's where that title comes from. That's where I get to use my degree. And then the other side is aircrew, which is 100% just on the job training. So again, 5 years ago, I didn't know what a drop son was, but now I've launched, over 1,000 of them. And really just all of these science and data systems in the aircraft, whether it's hurricanes or the Arctic stuff or whatever, the engineers and the technicians, we serve as operators on these aircraft. So it's not just, doing the office work, but it's also being part of the aircrew, operating those systems. In the event of any emergencies, we're trained to handle emergencies. I'm trained to fight fires on an aircraft, which is not something I ever want to do, but I know how.
Scariest part of flight training, when learning and doing a private pilot license, was the fire procedures for if you catch fire in midair, the single engine airplane. That's the stuff that keeps you up at night. Everything else is sort of whatever. I mean, it's bad, but but that's that's one of those things where it's like you got to know your stuff. Why is it? I think again, it's one of these things I think I know, but I'll defer to your expertise. Why is it that we're punching through these hurricanes in 50-year-old airplanes? Why not use something newer, maybe with a nice turbine engine, gets better fuel mileage, and probably goes faster? What's the appeal of a C-130 and a P-3 Orion that we're still using these airframes as opposed to, like I said, something a little bit new. I mean, there's bound to be a couple of 737s floating around somewhere, might have better creature comforts, a little better gas mileage. What's the
maybe
the
Nick, like a flight attendant, Yeah.
So one is that these are proven platforms that have been flying these storms for decades at this point. And as an engineer, I absolutely believe in the adage of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So these aircraft have proven themselves time and time again that they can punch into these storms, that they can handle the mission, they can get all of that data that we need, and they can get back safely on the ground. The main reason that we use propeller planes instead of jets is that when you're in these storms, there are updrafts and downdrafts all over the place. And we are constantly fighting against those, because if you are flying along and you get in an updraft or a downdraft and you don't adjust for that, there's potential that you're going to overstress the airframe. And so with propeller planes, speaking just from the P3 side here, we've got the two pilots up front. The guy in the left seat is keeping things steady as we're flying through. The guy on the right seat is backing him up. And in between them is a flight engineer. I'm an aerospace engineer who flies. I'm not a flight engineer. It's an important distinction because the flight engineer is sitting between them and he's watching the airspeed and he's got his hands on the throttles. And so if we start losing airspeed or gaining too much airspeed, he can adjust those throttles, which changes the pitch of the blade, and we can adjust for those updrafts and downdrafts more effectively, and it allows us to reduce stresses in the airframe. Now, sometimes we'll still get in some bad turbulence and get pretty significant stresses on the aircraft, but we have G meters inside that we can measure that, and we have our limits. So we know that if we've hit a certain point on the G meter, we've kind of pushed the limits here, we're probably going to go home. And we've done that a couple of times, so even just since the time I've been here. But it's all about keeping the crews safe and keeping the aircraft safe. And propeller aircraft allow us to do that. And again, I've only been at this for 4 years, but these airplanes have been flying for 40 years. So a lot of it is just, knowledge at this point of, okay, if we're going to fly through a hurricane, we're going to fly at 210 knots because that is a comfortable speed for us. It's above our stall speed, but it's also not too fast. We're going to overstress the aircraft constantly. So that is the main reason. 737s are nice. I've flown Southwest. Great airplanes.
Nice peanuts.
But yeah. But they're just, it's not the right tool for the job. And I am a P3 believer. I've got over I think 250 hours now on our P3s flying missions, and these are aircraft that are built to last, and our maintainers on the ground, the guys taking care of these airplanes, are top tier. You'd be hard pressed to find people who can take better care of aircraft. So yeah, even after 40 years, they're still punching through hurricanes, and they're going to go punch through a hurricane tomorrow. So
what is it about, we'll sort of pivot a little bit and sort of tap into some of maybe the on-the-job training with meteorology and things you've picked up and things you've heard and everything. What is it about this year? This has been nuts. I mean, we're talking about something that was literally a tropical storm 24 hours ago is now flirting with Cat 5 status as it approaches the coastline of Central America. And this is a story that we've heard not just once or twice, but the last 5 storms have undergone rapid intensification this year. I have 2 questions, but one is there something about this year? Is it just and James, for those who are able to watch, is showing a satellite image of Hurricane Eta, which is getting ready to plow into Central America. This is a buzzsaw. Is there something about this year, or is it just, we're flying more missions and we know what to look for, and so we're just, we're seeing it more often than we had before because we're looking for it? Or is it just happening more often this year?
This year's certainly been crazy as far as the number of storms are concerned, as far as the number of storms that go into rapid intensification. In the aviation world, we talk about Swiss cheese models when something goes wrong, where, if you have something wrong over here on its own, it's not that bad. But when you get a bunch of conditions that line up just right, something can fall through. And this year we've had, anomalously high sea surface temperatures. We've had La Nina conditions for most of it, which historically, leads to a more active Atlantic hurricane season. And so I think it's a combination of a lot of different things. And I always talk about things from an engineering perspective because that's what I know. And the one thing that I look at is the one thing that I really think contributes to a lot of this is sea surface temperatures, because that's just more energy available for these systems to come along and soak up and turn that that heat into kinetic energy of winds. And really, it's just been you've just had the right conditions in a lot of different instances for these storms to intensify that quickly. You could call it a stroke of bad luck. You could call it a stroke of the 2020s, whatever you want. But that's just, how it's been this year.
I think I could add a little bit to that, like on the meteorology side, if you guys want. So you nailed it. Obviously, with the sea surface temperatures are just insanely warm this year in the Atlantic, the Caribbean. They were in the Gulf, especially as well. And aside from that, the upper level conditions have been really ideal for this rapid intensification, especially with the last, 5 systems, that we've seen go through that. We've had very, very little wind shear affecting these systems, aside from, and now there's been so many now, I'm losing track. There was one that came up through the Gulf. I don't know if it was the last one that made landfall in Louisiana or the one before that, but wind shear from the upper level trough kind of sheared it apart toward the end, and it weakened a little bit right before landfall. But overall, wind shear has been really favorable, and I think it's just the kind of the perfect timing. I use that loosely because it wasn't good, obviously, but the perfect timing of when the storm systems came in. I mean, they were just really dealing with the perfect conditions to rapidly intensify, and there was nothing to stop them.
And Nick, you find out one of the, you mentioned that your main role right now on these airplanes is dropping dropsondes. Tell us a little about what dropsondes are, what they do, and the process for you launching one, or 5 or 10 or 20 in a hurricane.
Yeah, so I always say, think of a dropsonde like a weather balloon in reverse. So it's got your atmospheric sensing package. It's going to gather you wind speed and wind direction, temperature, pressure, and humidity. And when you attach that to a weather balloon, it floats up through the atmosphere and you get a profile at that point. Everything's great. Can't really launch a balloon in a hurricane, especially when it's out over the water. And so dropsondes just take that sensor package, but instead of a balloon, you've got a parachute. And so the P3 has, I always get this number wrong, 23 openings in the bottom of it, one of which is a pressure
23.
chute.
I figured there were like 2.
No, so important
what are
to
the
remember.
other 22 for?
Important to remember.
We'll get to that. Let's talk about dropsondes. We'll get to that.
Okay. So weather balloon in reverse, you've got your sensor package. It's about 18 inches long and about the diameter of a Pringles can. And so my job on the aircraft, I prepare these things pre-flight, make sure that they're good to go. A typical mission on the P3, you prep about 20 to 30. On the jet, it's more like 30 to 40. You make sure they're ready to go. And whether it's on the jet or the P3, there are predetermined drop points throughout the storm. So on the P3, we usually drop an endpoint a midpoint, a center sonde in the eye, and then midpoint and an end point on the way out. A lot of times we'll have scientists with us who want to see radius of max winds. So we'll do some ad hoc drops in the middle there, just watching the winds tick up, the flight level winds tick up. And when they hit a maximum, we'll launch a sonde out. And so my job is to sync these up with the computer system, make sure that they're talking to each other over the radio. There's a pressure chute behind me, and I load it in. And then when the flight director, who's our onboard meteorologist sitting up front, calls for the drop, my job is to flip the switch. And on the P3, there's it's like a little pneumatic, it's a little motor system. That when I flip the switch, it just slowly opens this valve, and then the pressure differential from inside the aircraft to the outside of the aircraft just shoots it out the bottom. On the jet, it's much more dramatic. I posted a video of it last week. It's less dramatic, but it's much faster because the pressure differential is much higher. But same process. You flip a switch, it opens a valve and shoots the sonde out, and then it seals back up. And so on a mission flight, we'll do that 20 to 30 times on the P3, 30 to 40 times on the jet. And at each of those points, you're getting a profile of the atmosphere. So you're getting the temperature, the pressure, the humidity, the winds, all the way from your flight level down to the ocean surface. And then once it's launched, my job is to look at the data as it's coming in and make sure that we're getting what we need, make sure that the sensor hasn't broken, make sure that it's receiving GPS signal. And if it looks good, I relay that to the flight director, and then they say, okay, this many minutes until the next drop. And at that point, I'm just prepping for the next one, eating a snack, whatever. But that is the job for most of the time on these flights.
So Nick, when we get the raw data file back, like tonight, it says the pressure was 927.4, but that's always a little lower than what we get back on the Vortex data message. What's the difference? What's that 1 or 2 millibars? Do you know why that is?
So I know that once that data comes in, either a meteorologist on board the P3 or the folks at the Hurricane Center will take that data and do quality control on it, because sometimes you'll get noise in that data stream. And so they're just, picking out the real signal from it. Because especially when you're talking about surface pressures or surface temperatures, sometimes the sondes will hit the water and they won't immediately die, and they'll still collect data for a couple seconds there. And so you've got to fish through and find out, all right, where exactly was this? And sometimes you don't get a data point right at the surface. Sometimes it'll be like 10 meters up or 20 meters up. And so you have to, extrapolate down to that. But again, that's not my job. I don't really play part in that process. I'm just the guy who flips the switch.
Talk about the butterfly pattern for a minute, how it works and why it's the way it is.
Yeah.
Because that's fascinating to me. So, and then talk, like when Zeta was coming up to the coast, I wonder if they were going to try to squeeze one more penetration in. What's the final call there on whether they can get one more in or not in that situation?
Yeah. So the butterfly pattern, we also call it a figure 4. The goal of that pattern is to sample every part of the storm that we can in a reasonable amount of time using, less than the total amount of gas that we have on board, because we want to land back with a little extra fuel.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. And so typically we'll have our IP, our initial point, we'll fly a leg straight through from one side of the storm to the other, get out to the other side, make a turn, and then typically come back and fly another pass straight through the storm at it's perpendicular to that path that we just made. So, you're getting data from different quadrants of the storm here. And then once we get back out on the other side, we'll make another turn and then come back at a 45-degree angle to kind of get in the middle there. So you're trying to sample all around that storm because you want to know what the conditions are at each point. Because these things they're giant machines pretty much. If one part isn't running as efficiently as the others, then the whole thing can really just fall apart. And so that's why we fly the figure 4 pattern. When it comes to when a storm is close to land, our job as hurricane hunters is to really just be the weather station where there aren't any. So once the storm gets close to land, you've got ground-based radars, you've got people who can launch weather balloons, you've got all these other systems in place that can collect that data. So our job is, when that storm is still out over water and away from all of that instrumentation, to go and get that data. We've got the radars, we've got the drop zones, we've got everything we need. We don't drop over land, and we also don't like to drop close to land because you don't want to drop anything on anybody's house. Drop zones are they're less than a pound, so it probably wouldn't do crazy damage to anything if we did hit someone's house, but you still don't want that to happen. And so typically when a storm's close to land, we try not to fly straight through. If we do get to the eye and it's close to land, we'll make a turn and do what we call shore patrol, which where you're just flying along the coast and, gathering data as it's coming in. But yeah, we don't like to drop on people's houses. That's and no house has been dropped on to this day, as far as I know. That could be untrue.
It's a good rule of thumb in aviation. Yeah. Don't drop on people's houses. I mean, it didn't work out for the Wicked Witch in the East. I don't think it's going to work out for anybody since then. Bill, you had other questions, or did you get yours in?
Oh, there's plenty of them for Nick. That's for sure. You mentioned the Air Force and Noaa. Is there any rivalry there, Nick, at all?
Not officially.
No rivalry's official.
Certainly. I think some are official. But no, those guys, I mean, I interact with a lot of them on Twitter and on the internet, but they're all, great folks out there doing the same job that we do. One of our flight directors, actually, she is in the 53rd as a weather officer, but also is a meteorologist for us. So
cool.
She's playing both sides of the field there. But
he's a double agent.
Exactly. Yeah. But no, they're out there doing the same mission that we are. It's all about keeping people safe on the ground. If there is any rivalry there, it's just a matter of trying to see who can get more views or likes on videos of flying into eyes of hurricanes, which I think I've done a stellar job in the last few years.
You're number one.
There you go. And I do everything that I can to really paint a clear picture of what our operation is and how it works and why it works the way it does and what it does for people on the ground. Because again, and I'll keep saying this, 5 years ago, I didn't know that any of this was a thing, but it's incredible. And I think that everyone should know about it. And so, when I'm not at work doing my job, I'm somewhere else probably talking about my job or tweeting about my job and saying, hey, here's what we do and here's why it's important. And look how cool this hurricane eye looks.
And it's given you some real unique opportunities to do educational outreach, hasn't it, Nick?
It really has. And, I've talked with a bunch of people, especially this year, who have, just invited me to, come talk to their students or come talk to their weather group or whatever. And really, the more people that I can reach in talking about our missions and talking about why they're important and how they impact people, that brings me joy on a personal level, not just, success within my own job there. Because sharing all this stuff is not in my job description. And if anything, I do good work. I'm sure our public affairs folks would appreciate it sometimes if I would not talk about things so often, but I think it's important to share as much as possible, because we do great work.
I know you're not shy about, commenting on your personal social media feeds about social things. So does that cause some heartburn, for them at times, or since that's your personal account, do they leave you alone about that? Because I admire you for for speaking your mind about those things.
It is my personal account, and so and I've got the line there in the bio. Content and opinions here are my own. That's probably not any kind of shield, but
yeah.
I work for a senior VP of news content and standards, and I can tell you that no, it's not.
Well, there you go.
You're warned about that on an annual basis.
But as long as it's not on government time or using government property, then it's my account, and I just it's my own. It's been my own. I've been on Twitter since the Bush administration, is the joke that I always make. And certainly,
which one?
Bush 2. Bush 2.
There's only
Electric
one, James.
Boogaloo.
It hasn't been around that long. Just because you've been around that long doesn't mean Twitter has been.
I don't think the tweeter existed during Bush 1.
Nope.
Nope. So talk a minute about birds in the eye. That always concerns me, Nick. I know they get in there somehow, and I guess they get in there when it's over land one time, or maybe they've been picked up while it's over the ocean. But do they just follow the storm all the way till they find land again? Do they survive the whole time?
We see that sometimes, and I really think it's just they kind of get caught in there. And I mean, typically they're not flying up where we are, because we're at 8,000 to 10,000 feet. But especially if we're doing like a low-level invest or something, and we're only down to like 5,000 feet, you'll see birds around these things, and it is interesting that they're in there. I'm not a what's the term? Ornithologist. I'm not an ornithologist, so I don't. I can't speak for the birds. I hope they're okay wherever they came from.
I worry about those birds.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
but you've flown a lot of sea ice missions too. So talk about those, how they're different, and your thoughts on sea ice today, because we hear a lot of conflicting information about that these days.
Yeah, so I'm pursuing a master's degree in physical oceanography at the University of South Florida, and the what caused me to get into that was going to Alaska for the first time to support one of these Arctic sea ice surveys. And the first year I went up, we operated out of Kotzebue, Alaska, which is a very small town up on the northwest coast. There's only about 3,000 people there, but they've got a really nice airport. And we fly out, and these missions are only at 500 feet. So you're 500 feet above the Chukchi Sea, which is, just part of the Arctic Ocean. And first year I was up there was 2017. We operated out of Kotzebue, and, decent amount of sea ice. I had never been to Alaska, so any amount of sea ice was impressive to me. And, we work with a great scientist. He's on my grad school committee. He's out of the University of Washington. And so 2017, saw some sea ice, thought, all right, yeah, sea ice mission, cool. 2018, went back up to Alaska, operated out of Kotzebue for the most part again, but the sea ice was a lot further north. So we had to fly further north to actually find the ice edge, to drop the AXBTs, to drop the sensing instruments to gather all this data. And towards the end of that stint in 2018, we had to fly up to, and I hope I pronounce this correctly, Utqiagvik, formerly Barrow, but now it's Utqiagvik again, which is the...
Wait, pronounce that again. I've seen that over and over, and I've never heard anybody pronounce that name. So do it really slowly, we can get it. I'm
pretty sure, now don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that it is...
Oh, we're going to quote you on this.
Okay, thank you. I'm pretty sure that it is Utqiagvik, because there's a T and a Q and an IAGVIK. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, so we had to go up there to find sea ice because it had retreated that far north. And in 2017, I started looking at historical sea ice records, and I thought, well, there should be more sea ice here than we're seeing. And then in 2018, that was just exacerbated further of, there should really be more sea ice here. And then I went back up to Alaska in 2019, and this is all in late May, early June. So you expect there to be less sea ice, but again, historically compared to the records that we have, should be a lot more. In 2018, we completely operated out of, I hope I say this right again, Utqiagvik, which is about 300 miles further north than Kotzebue is. And that's just because the sea ice had retreated that far. So if you wanted to find sea ice, you had to go to the tippy top of Alaska. That is the northernmost settlement in the United States. You can't go further north than that. And so I love those missions because you're flying around at 500 feet above the water. You can look down, you can see whales, you can see seals. I've yet to see a polar bear, really wanted to see one. And this last year, in 2019, we put a FLIR camera, forward-looking infrared, onto the aircraft. So, you can spot seals from miles away with this thing because they just light up like Christmas lights. And I was like, I'm going to find a polar bear with this thing. But apparently polar
bears get hold of those cameras.
Yeah, but apparently polar bears are so well insulated that they don't show up on IR.
Yeah.
Oh.
Which bummer for me because I just want to see a polar bear. But good for them because I guess they're harder to find and they're, endangered as it is. But so yeah, you see all this wildlife. You see how beautiful this ecosystem is. You get to talk to some of the people who've lived there for years and years, and they're saying, yeah, there's less sea ice these days, and so it's really something to witness. Kind of scary to witness actually, because just year over year the changes I've seen have been alarming. I didn't have the opportunity to go up this year because there's a pandemic, but hopefully I'll get to go up next year. Spend some more time in Alaska. That's a really fun mission up there. We also do and I got to do this in 2019 also, because this is what the FLIR camera was actually was for our Harbor Seals project. And this was out in the Aleutian chain. And the scientists fly around in one of our twin otters between 500 to 700 feet. And you're flying slow enough that you can take the windows out. And these folks will lean out the window with, DSLR cameras and take photos of seals as they're flying over them. And they're doing this because you want to count the number of seals in a certain area because they're indicator species. And if there's a healthy population of seals, then the underlying ecosystem is probably also very healthy. And so we put the FLIR on the aircraft to help those folks out because, instead of having to look at DSLR images from, a camera, you can just look at video from this FLIR that says, look at all these bright blips of seals, different spots. You do have to differentiate from sea lions though, not the same. And apparently there's some turf wars. I don't know much about that, but I've heard.
And so Nick, talk about the role of the Noaa planes in search and rescue, because there was a rescue in Hurricane Lorenzo. Mm-hmm. And I've always been fascinated by that. Talk about that process.
Yeah. So I was on one of the crews last year that we were deployed to Barbados to do research missions into Hurricane Lorenzo. And this was, Lorenzo was no threat to land. It was out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, but it was also a really powerful hurricane. And the folks at the Hurricane Research Division wanted to get some data on it. And so they deployed the jet, they deployed both P3s out to Barbados, as far east as we can get to go chase this thing. Our aircraft, the aircraft I was on, Kermit, we got there a day later than Miss Piggy did. So while we were transiting out to Barbados, Miss Piggy was flying to Hurricane Lorenzo to get to, fly a mission. And Hurricane Lorenzo was about 4 hours of transit time out, and then only about an hour and a half to 2 hours on station, actually in the storm environment. And then, 3.5 hours, 4 hours transit back. So this thing is way out there. And they got a call from the United States Coast Guard that a ship had, put out a distress signal in Hurricane Lorenzo. Is the merchant vessel Bourbon Road, and yeah, they got retasked to do search and rescue, and they flew down at 500 feet in the area it was got the last signal from. Didn't really see much because the hurricane was still nearby, and it's tough to see anything when you're flying at 230 miles an hour, 500 feet above the water. The next day, our crew got tasked by the United States Coast Guard to fly out and search for that ship. And we were tasked with this because we were the only people in the area. We're the search area for where the ship went down was 1,000 miles from anything. It was 900 miles from Bermuda, 1,000 miles from Barbados, 1,000 miles from the Azores. Like, you could not get more in the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean if you tried. And so we flew out, and again, 3.5 hours transit, descended down. We're flying at 200 feet. The weather had cleared up. There were some merchant vessels on the scene, some cargo ships that had come into the area and were helping to look. And, we flew a search pattern. Our navigator was looking at, standard search and rescue patterns to fly on our way out there. So, we knew we're going to try something here. It's not typically our job. And so we flew out there, flew 200 feet. And earlier that morning, a French aircraft had found a life raft with 3 guys alive in it. And so we heard this before we went out. So we thought, oh my gosh, like, these guys are still out there. There's a chance that we can, help some people here. But we spent, 2 hours on station. We found a lifeboat. There's no one in it. We found a bunch of debris. We were coordinating these merchant vessels pretty much, of saying, hey, we see something over here. We're going to fly over it and mark on the radio, and you guys go check it out. And, we didn't end up finding any more survivors personally. I still think about that mission because certainly not something that I ever expected to do in this job, and certainly not something I ever want to have to do again, because it's just kind of tough to think about. But I have a pair of binoculars now that I carry with me when I'm on the P3, because you never know when you're going to get tasked for search and rescue stuff. And the whole time we were out there looking for stuff, I kept thinking, man, it'd be great if I had some binoculars to look at this stuff with. And so, yeah, that's, it's something we never want to have to do, because, we hope that people are able to just steer away from these things. But, it's also, it's a duty for us, because, if we were to ever go down at some point, you would hope that someone else would come along looking for us. So, yeah, tough to talk about, tough to think about, but that's kind of my 2 cents on it.
And it's
Hey,
an
Nick,
amazing
what's your greatest fear?
Safety record too, James. I mean, since what, 1955, since we've lost a reconnaissance plane in the Atlantic, that's an amazing safety record. So let's keep it up,
Nick. Nick, what's your greatest fear on a mission?
That I'm going to screw something up. Mainly for the science side of things. So it's especially on missions where we've got these folks from the Hurricane Research Division on board, and they're wanting 8 dropsondes launched within like a minute. I am always concerned that I'm going to screw something up and throw out the wrong dropsonde, or not have it fully set up by the time I launch it out. And so when I'm up there, I'm focused on doing everything I can right. So what's great about the GoPro is that I've got the suction cup, and I can just put it on the window, and I can just hit record, and I don't have to think about it. And then I can just focus on doing my hurricane hunting stuff.
How many of the dropsondes fail, out of curiosity?
It depends. We have I think it's a 95% success rate with these. That's
better than I thought. That's not bad.
Yeah, it's pretty good. We have really bad success rate with AXBTs, but that's because the ones we've been launching were made in like the 80s, and we got them as Navy surplus. They have about a 20% success rate. Yeah, it's not great. There was a mission once. It was a research mission into Hurricane Florence, where I launched 8 BTs that day, and I was 8 for 8 on these terrible old BTs. So that was a personal success for me.
So didn't we have the guy on last week that makes the drop zones, James? So now we have the guy who drops them, and we had the guy who makes them last week.
That's true. From start to finish, there you go. What's the one thing, Nick, you want people to know about Hurricane Hunter missions? That because all the people see your data and they see the maps and they see what you're doing, but what's the one thing that you want people to know about these missions that maybe they don't know?
I would want them to know how big of a team effort it is, because I share stuff from my perspective, and the official Noaa Hurricane Hunter account, which is run by some great people, they refuse to give me the keys. I can understand.
Just like James won't give us the keys to his either, Nick. Doggone it.
But so I share things from my perspective, and so what people see is primarily from my perspective. You see the drops on side of stuff. You see the view out the window just behind the wing on the right side on the P3s. That's my point of view in this stuff. But I am such an incredibly small part of this whole process of gathering data and getting that into the forecast models that actually predict where these things are going to go and how strong they're going to be. Because on the P3, on a typical mission flight in a non-pandemic year, there's like 12 to 15 people on board. There's 3 pilots, there's 2 flight engineers, there's a flight director, there's a navigator, there's scientists from the Hurricane Research Division, there's engineers and technicians. It's a lot of folks. And that's not even
not many crazy people that want to go up into that and fly into hurricanes.
There are so many crazy people that we have a watch bill set up for who's going to be on which aircraft at which times. And that's why I'm on the jet right now. I'm not on the P3 because you got to be fair and give people their shot on the aircraft.
How many of your position are there working, like in your your division?
Let's see. We have, I think we only have like 7 engineers total at our office. Our office is also a small operation. There's only about 115 people there. Okay. There's about 40 or so Noaa Corps officers. Those are our pilots and navigators. And then there's 60 or so odd civilians, which are the engineers and technicians and meteorologists and supply folks and maintainers and all the other people. But so yeah, there's all of those people in the aircraft. Then there's also the ground maintainers, the guys who are taking care of the aircraft between missions, making sure they're still ready to go, refueling them, cleaning off the propellers, doing whatever else they need to. That's just our operation. Then you've got the people at the Hurricane Research Division who are piggybacking on a lot of these operational flights where we gather this data, and they're gathering a bunch of science data to improve their in-house forecast models like the HWRF that people talk about all the time. And then there's also the folks at the National Hurricane Center who are actually parsing through all of that data and making sense of it, and then creating those excellent products that you see on hurricanes.gov on where the storm's going to go. And it's all right, here's where there's a hurricane warning, here's where there's a tropical storm watch. So it's just this huge chain of people that come together to make this happen. And I can only share things from my perspective. And I don't want people to think that I'm like the guy doing all of this, because I'm not. If anything, I'm arguably the smallest part of it.
Well, you're the guy with a good Twitter account and the big hair. I mean, let's just put it that way, okay? I mean, nobody else has that. But do you have a chance to get to know these men and women that serve with you on these missions at all? Do you spend time with them before you go up, or do you just kind of meet them on board the plane?
No. So especially when we forward deploy out to the islands, like to St. Croix, Barbados, wherever, once you land back from a mission, these are the same people you get dinner with. These are the same people that, you know, you get a rum punch with after a long series. And, you know, a lot of these people, especially the folks within our office and at the Hurricane Research Division, you know, that I work with the most, they're my friends. They, you know, I care about these people. They care about my life outside of hurricane hunting. I care about theirs. And it's really just a great group of folks. A lot of our pilots are former Navy people, so they've got tons of sea stories to share. And, you know, every single deployment, every single mission series with these folks is significant and memorable and fun.
Are you typically one of the youngest on board?
Yes.
Let me just say this on behalf of us old geezers, okay? All these old guys talk about your generation, about how you're lazy and incompetent. No, I think your generation is brilliant. I really do. And I'm excited for the future. I mean, I'm really excited. So don't let these old cranks get on your nerves, okay? If they do, you tell them to come see me and I'll straighten them out. But I do want to ask, because a lot of people follow you on Twitter, mm-hmm. and especially younger people, maybe they're in high school and they love science. They love meteorology. They love tropical weather. They love hurricanes. And they want to be like you. What's your advice? You've been down this path and you've shared your journey. What's your advice for a young person, say, that's in high school that might be listening to this show, that they want to be on board doing what you do in 10 years?
Right. It's tough to boil it down to one thing. Again, if they're interested in tropical meteorology, if they're interested in this kind of stuff, they've already got a leg up on where I was.
What did you have to study, like, meteorology wise? I'm assuming you had to for the flight part of the aero part of this.
That is all on the job training.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine that.
So all of my meteorology background comes from hanging out with meteorologists, you know, in the transit time on the flights and in between flights. That is where all of my meteorology knowledge comes. You know, just from sitting and talking with these folks who have done it for years. One of my favorite flight directors, he's been chasing hurricanes since 1980. So, you know, 40 years of experience, and he sits next to me at the office. His cube's one over. So I go and talk to him all the time about, hey, what does this mean? Or, you know, just trying to learn anything I can from him. So that's my background in meteorology.
Would you go storm chasing, like tornadoes, or do you just stick to hurricanes?
Again, I would do the Kansas tornado chasing project.
No. I mean, like, on the ground.
Oh, on the ground.
Oh yeah.
I probably have too many other hobbies. I'd probably go once just to say I did it, but
okay.
I certainly wouldn't, you know, get too involved into it. I think I'm a little stretched thin as it is with my interest, but yeah, as far as getting to this point, there's so many different routes that you can take to get involved in hurricane hunting. I took the civilian engineering route. So we have aerospace engineers and electrical engineers, you know, the folks who can make the systems on aircraft work. We've also got meteorologists. So if you want to study meteorology, we've got some flight directors who are pretty young. One of our flight directors, she's actually 2 years younger than me, went to Florida State, maybe. I can't remember exactly. So many of our flight directors went to Florida State, though. But so you can go to the meteorology route. You can commission as a Noaa Corps officer and be a pilot or a navigator. The advice that I would give, though, is don't limit yourself. Don't shoehorn yourself into one thing just because you think that's the only way to do it. Because, again, you know, with me, I'm talking about the long game. And did I ever expect hurricane hunting to be part of my path to potentially becoming an astronaut? No, but it's been a great stepping stone so far, and it's been a great thing to get into.
Don't get stuck behind a desk.
Don't get stuck behind a desk. Yes, that is the advice.
As we're all coming to you from behind desks.
Well,
yes.
Thanks, Nate. So, Nick, one last thing. When the president was getting briefed after Hurricane Laura, and Ken Graham's telling him all about all the great technology and the hurricane hunters and all this, and the president says, if there are two planes in the storm, how do they, is that dangerous? How do they keep from hitting each other? And I thought, I don't know the answer to that. How do the two planes, if there are two planes in the storm at the same time, how do y'all coordinate?
We talk to each other over the radios. So if there's a P3 and a C-130 in the storm at the same time, which there often are, they're constantly talking to each other, and we keep track of where we are, to be sure that, we're not flying right at each other, to be sure that we're not potentially dropping a drop sonde on someone else. I think it was a couple storms ago, maybe it was Delta. I think the Air Force C-130 and one of our P3s was in the eye at the same time, and the Air Force guys actually, zoomed in and got us on camera from their aircraft.
Oh wow!
You'd have to go to Air Force Twitter to find that though. So the one main thing that we deconflict with is the jet and the P3s and the C-130s, because the jet is way up high, and those drop sondes are from 45,000 feet. It takes about 15 minutes for one of those drop sondes to hit the surface. So when we're dropping from that altitude, we are making sure that the P3s and the C-130s are not going to fly anywhere near where we just launched a drop sonde at, because you don't want anybody to hit anything. It's one thing if a less than 1 pound drop sonde lands on your house. It's another thing if you hit the 1 pound drop sonde going 230 miles an hour.
Neither is good.
Yeah. Nick, have you spent any time at the National Hurricane Center? Have you ever visited the facility and talked with Ken Graham and the folks down there at all?
So I've never been there, but I have met Ken Graham, and I've met a bunch of the other forecasters at the National Hurricane Center, because typically in the springtime, we do our hurricane awareness tours. So 2 years ago, I got to go on both the Caribbean hurricane awareness tours. So I got to go to Mexico and Panama and Jamaica and Puerto Rico, all these wonderful places. And then I also got to go on the Gulf Coast tour, which was Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, and Florida. And so I've met some of the folks from there. They're great folks, really smart people, really masters of their craft. But I've never actually been to the Hurricane Center. That is a field trip I need to take one day.
I'll tell my boring Hurricane Center story another day from 1985 during a storm called Gloria. That's a story for another day. So one more thing, Nick, and we've kept you way longer than we promised here. So you are active on social media. You are communicating directly with the public, which I think is a great thing. You are transparent. The information is good. You're funny. You're honest. I don't see many others doing that. What kind of pulled you into that? What's your interest in the social media accounts?
So again, I've been on Twitter since the Bush administration. It was the very tail end of the Bush administration. It was like June 2008 is when I joined Twitter. So I've been in that game for like 12 years. And since I've been in it, it's always just been a platform for me to spout random musings, to give out my opinions on things, to share what's going on in my life. And as I've gotten older, and not been a punk teenager idiot, but become, a more composed and responsible adult and, responsible member of society.
I'm glad somebody on this show's like that. That's good.
Yeah. I think the account itself has evolved over time, as I have. And when it comes to sharing all of this, stuff about my job, I love what I do. And I think that I've stumbled into something that is absolutely incredible, and that, is going to be like a highlight for my entire life going forward. And I want to share as much of that as I can. So, whether it's missions up in the Arctic or whether it's flying into the eye of a hurricane, the things that I do, I'm kind of on the front lines of these things that impact other people's lives. And so, the social media game has evolved from me just talking about myself and board games and whatever else to talking about, things that I care about and things that other people care about. And so it really is just a wonderful thing. I think I'm at like 17,000 Twitter followers now. I've certainly been on a meteoric rise the last few years. It's amazing what, a video of yourself getting bounced around in a hurricane will do for your follower count. But I just think it's the stuff that I get to see firsthand is so very important. And I just want to communicate it as well as possible. And I think that our public affairs folks do a great job of that. I think that I'm just a nice supplement to that, though. I think I certainly help more than I hurt.
I mean, do you ever get into hassle with these public affairs people? I mean, because I'll be honest with you. I mean, let's be blunt here. Your stuff is really good, and sometimes the PA people, it's kind of lame. I mean, that's just kind of what they do. I mean, do you ever get any fights with these guys?
Not at all. I mean, the public affairs folks, they're doing as well as they can to communicate the message through the appropriate and official channels, and stay on the Noaa message. And I try to do that to the best extent possible as well. I just try to add, my own unique flair to it, which more often than not tends to be funny or tends to be, a little more exciting than this is an official message from so-and-so. It's more just like,
this
hey guys,
is Noaa.
Yeah. It's like, hey guys, here's what I did today.
So before we let you go, you got to tell us where's Ada going. I mean, no, not in the short term. We all know that. Let's say this weekend. All right, this weekend is back out over the water. Where's it going? We like to nail people down, put them in the hot seat.
Is this like is this more like I bet this is where it's going to go, or is this more like
it's a trick question, Nick? Don't do it.
It sounds like it's a trick question.
I've sucked Nate into this one before, but I know I can suck you into this one too.
And
so go.
It sounds like the headline tomorrow is going to be Noaa Hurricane Hunter says Ada is going to hit here in 7 days.
Tomorrow,
it's going to strike Tampa Bay in 10 days.
Exactly. And that's not what I want. Because that would certainly get me in a tiff with the public affairs.
We
which
won't
again,
do that to you.
I am trying to avoid that as much as I can.
Let me put Nate on that. Nate, where's it going? Forget that, Nick don't want to get in trouble with PA. You got nobody to get in trouble with. Where's it going?
Nate can't go back to Lake Charles, so he's
they're never gonna let me in Louisiana again. And I like Cajun food. But I saw one model, I think it was like a parallel GFS run that had it cutting across and then moving north and then wandering around, cutting across Florida, splitting the low center, and then going into like Alabama and Mississippi. And the the tag on the tweet or whatever was basically, this model run is so 2020 because it was crazy. It was just absolutely nuts.
Been a lot of
I think at the moment, the folks in Central America, Nicaragua especially, just need our prayers and good thoughts, and we'll try and figure out where the thing's going to go after this, but it's going to be a rough night for those folks, unfortunately.
Yeah,
what's the population of Nicaragua?
155 miles per hour just on this last run.
What did you say? 155?
I think so.
Oh, geez.
I think that's what I'm reading.
So we're what, 2 mile an hour short of Cat 5
yeah.
strength? Wow.
What's the population of Nicaragua? Does anybody know?
6.5 4 million, give or take half a dozen.
Wow.
Thousand.
This could be a total catastrophe.
Someone said that portion where it's going in is a little less populated, which is some good news.
And then Honduras, which is just north of there, is 9.5 million as of 2017. So there's a lot of people there.
At first, it looked like it was just going to be a serious rain situation. 20, 30 inches of rainfall, I think, is what the NHC was including in their key messages or the discussion, one of the two, at first. And then, you think, oh, they're going to get a break from the winds at least, even though it's going to be a slow moving rain producer. And now they're getting kind of the worst of both situations.
And if you look at the NHC forecast, they bring it back to tropical storm strength Saturday night over the open waters of the Western Caribbean.
Yep. And there's a lot of oceanic heat content over that part of the ocean too.
Yeah.
So one last question. I keep doing my one last question gig here, but
that's fine. I got all the time, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, I noticed one of the planes flew straight over, and I guess it was a Noaa plane because it came out of Central Florida, flew right over Cuba. Is that okay now, or do you have to get special permission to do that?
We have a special flight clearance with them, and we've just gotten that this year, and so we let them know prior, hey, it's going to be this aircraft flying at this altitude at this time. And as long as we tell them in advance, they are, okay with our overflights. And it's certainly useful for us to, be able to get on station, especially to those storms that are, deep down in the Caribbean. But yeah, that was us. If it's coming out of Central Florida, that's a Noaa plane. If it's coming out of Mississippi, that's an Air Force plane.
A random question, and we look at, tropical tidbits has become really popular, and that's usually just the easiest place for me to go to look at recon data. But that's coming from the Air Force planes, or is that coming from you guys?
It's both.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So you can.
I haven't looked at the tags specifically. When
you're looking at that data, if it's got an AF plus whatever number attached to it, that's an Air Force plane. Mm-hmm. And then if it's got the Noaa tag on it, then that's our aircraft. If it's Noaa 2, that's Kermit. If it's Noaa 3, that's Miss Piggy. If it's Noaa 9, that's Gonzo. I'm one of those people that had absolutely no idea there were two separate entities. Completely separate. Which is embarrassing to say as a meteorologist, but I'm definitely not a tropical meteorologist. I'm from Indiana, so I'm more of the forecasting snow up here, snow and ice. So
was the move to Lakeland an economic move to get away from the coast, or a political move? Do you know, Nick? From Tampa?
We moved in 2017. We were based on MacDill Air Force Base. I think the Air Force needed the hangar space, so we looked for a new base of operations. Didn't want to move too far. We tried to stay within 50 miles because you don't want to pick up an entire workforce and move them somewhere else. They did that in 1992, I think, when they moved our office from Miami to Tampa, and they didn't want to do that again. And so now we are at Lakeland Linder, now International Airport, and we've got a great facility there. We're actually expanding a little bit to get some extra hangar space, some new office space, and so we are certainly in business and doing well over in
more
Lakeland.
desks for you to sit behind eventually.
Exactly. Yes, more potential desks to sit behind. But yeah.
So Nick, I got the most important question of the night. I can't believe I'm the only guy that's got the nerve to ask this question. How many chemtrail missions have you flown?
Chemtrails.
Zero chemtrail mission.
Oh, you haven't been promoted to chemtrails yet, huh?
Yeah, they won't let me operate the chemtrail machine.
I just want to get up there and flip the switch, the chemtrail switch. So, those people are mean as a snake, and they operate in packs. And if you post a picture of cirrus clouds over on the Twitter, the Facebag, or the Gram, they send them over there. It's like an action team, and they come after you. And they're not nice. They're just not nice people at all.
I learned recently that Green Bay Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers is a chemtrail guy. And I tweeted at him saying, "Hey man, if you need someone to talk to you about this stuff, I'm available." So that's just me trying to hang out with Aaron Rodgers.
Well, did he
State
respond?
Farm commercials.
He did not respond. He's probably busy with work. I don't know.
Too many.
I mean, come on. Nick, if Nick tweeted me, I would immediately respond to that. I mean, come on, Aaron, what's the matter with you? I mean, we need to get Dr. Scala back on the show here. Yeah, we need to get him on the show. So Nick, so again, we want, if you can stay with us, we've got to pause for a quick second. We've got to do an astronomy report with Tony Rice and Jen's This Week in Tornado History. Can you stay for a few more minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So here's your homework. While we're in the recorded segment, you've got to come up with the pick of the week. This has to be something really good related to what you do, weather, meteorology, anything, website, anything. So be thinking of a pick of the week. In the meantime, let's pause now for Tony Rice and Jen's This Week in Tornado History.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
While that nip in the air triggered many of us to fire up the furnace for the first time this year, the early fall's still a great time for sky watching. One constellation along the northern horizon is really easy to find and has a rich mythology to go along with it: Ursa Major, or the Great Bear. It's well known to many cultures. It appears in the Bible, Greek and Roman mythology, and the sky stories of many Native American and Canadian First Nations. For the Mi'kmaq tribe of eastern Canada, the appearance of the Great Bear along the northern horizon comes just as the bears of southeastern Canada are preparing for hibernation. The nearby arc shape of the Corona Borealis constellation is said to be the bear's cave. The Roman and Greek myths also involve bears. In the Roman version, the god Jupiter comes across a beautiful maiden in the forest, Callisto. He immediately falls in love, as those passionate Roman gods were known to do. Fast forward a bit, and Callisto gives birth to a son, Arcus. But Jupiter's wife, she was the jealous type, so Jupiter turned Callisto and Arcus into bears to protect them. For good measure, he flung them up into the sky, using their once stubby tails, which became elongated. Today, NASA's Juno mission has been circling Jupiter since 2016, trying to figure out what Jupiter is hiding beneath those clouds, while Jupiter's second largest moon, Callisto, orbits from a distance. This week, look for the Big Dipper along the northern horizon. That long handle is also the long tail of the Great Bear, Ursa Major. Above, you'll find the Little Dipper in the Little Bear constellation, Boötes, also known as Arcus. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me in RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history. During the early morning of November 6, 2005, a devastating tornado traveled just over 41 miles from near Smith Mills, Kentucky, through southern Evansville, Indiana, northeast to near Gentryville, Indiana. The tornado crossed the Ohio River 3 times. A summary from the National Weather Service in Paducah states that 25 were killed. It was the deadliest tornado to hit Indiana since 1974. 20 of the deaths occurred at a large mobile home park near Interstate 164 on the south side of Evansville in Vanderburgh County. There were 350 mobile homes at the park, 100 were destroyed, and 125 damaged. It was a horrifying scene. Several bodies were carried almost 200 yards, and many were found near a nearby retention pond. There was an 8-year-old boy who was found alive in a ditch. He had been trapped under debris for over 12 hours. In Warwick County, a teenage girl was killed in a vehicle south of Boonville. In Dagonia Springs, 3 people, including a woman 8 months pregnant, died in a mobile home. There were over 230 injuries, and per the National Weather Service summary, 20 were critical and 63 resulted in hospital admissions. The tornado lasted 45 minutes. It began at 1:39 in the morning Central Standard Time and ended at 2:24 a.m. At least 500 homes or buildings were completely destroyed or severely damaged. Much of the damage was upper F2 or lower F3 intensity. You can read about this event and many more at our website, tornadotalk.com.
Jen, the chipmunks have been busy over there in your office. I can see they're cooking up something special for us over there on the Tornado Talk website.
They are. Yeah, we are all dancing on social media tomorrow, but I'll go ahead and announce it here. We're going to start working on some projects for the 10th anniversary of the super outbreak. We're going to work on summaries. So for the next 6 months, I'll be working with Nick and Nelson, 2 of my main writers. We're probably going to produce about 40 to 50 summaries. to cover the 10th anniversary of the super outbreak. So we have been creating rooms in Discord to organize ourselves and figure out which events we want to write about. Our goal is to write about all of the EF3s, 4s, and 5s. And then we picked a few of the EF1s and 2s to cover. And there's some events that, I didn't even realize happened. And we're hoping to not only explain what happened, but also try to reach out to the communities that were impacted and just really bring meaning to those folks who had, were affected so greatly from the outbreak. So I've talked to James a little bit. We're going to partner with him some on this event and just try to cover it. And Bill, we're so glad to have you and your insight and whatever you'd like to share too. So I know you've been watching us go crazy in there, and try to keep ourselves organized is the key part.
Well, I noticed yesterday something popped up and it came by. It said Vestavia Hills. And I'm like, that's my town. That's where I live. And of course, we had a tornado come through the Caba Heights section of our area that morning. And I noticed you were writing about that yesterday. So I'm like, Jim's writing. That was about a 3/4 of a mile from my house. So,
yeah, we're covering so many communities. So we're going to see if we can get ourselves organized. But the guys have been great. We meet every week on Zoom and we talk about what we're going to do and how we're going to keep ourselves straight. There's so much, and there's so much out there to try to hone it in and get the main points. And then we want to reach out to the different communities. So we'll be talking to you. That's for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jen. Beth, we want to talk to you for a minute. James always want to get out of here early, but we just, with great guests like we've got tonight, it's hard to do that.
That's the reason you're here, Bill. You're a professional host. If I have to go to Studio A, you got this. You got
You're
this.
Unprofessional host. That's for sure. But Beth, we're so excited you're here with us tonight. So talk to us about how you got in the business for a minute, and then tell us what you do for your day job now.
So like you said during the introduction, I do weather consulting. I own my own company with my fiance, who's also a meteorologist. We didn't plan to go into that sector initially. I had interned at our local Fox affiliate here in Indianapolis. I interned at the National Weather Service. So I kind of got, to see both of those sectors of meteorology. And my fiance had actually worked at a different private weather consulting company beforehand. And after he left there, he wasn't sure, what direction he wanted to go, or even if it was, meteorology anymore. And our families kind of convinced us, shortly thereafter, like, hey, you guys could, start your own company. You have the experience there, kind of how to run it, how to definitely, the forecasting experience in the Ohio Valley and the lower Great Lakes region. So we went for that. It was kind of a spur of the moment decision. It all came together in like a month maybe or less, that we kind of took it from this little inkling of an idea to, all right, I guess we're going to just go full blown out with this thing. And that was 4 years ago now. So like you said, we service a lot of different industries. Snow removal is our biggest industry that we service. And other than that, we've gotten to work with minor league baseball and the NFL and several different, types of people like that.
Now the NFL, that's no small deal right there for sure.
Yeah, we forecasted for the Colts training camp because they do the outdoor training camp. And of course it's open to the public and everything. So keeping an eye on the weather for them and forecasting even just for their practices, for if they're going to have to go to their indoor facility or if they can stay outside for the camp. There are a lot more industries that are impacted by weather than most people would think of. Like we have a donut shop that's one of our clients because they want to get their shipments in before the snow hits. So they want to plan to order ahead of time. It was the weirdest thing when they came to us, but that was 3 years ago now. So we've gotten kind of used to it, I guess.
So any advice, entrepreneurial advice to give to young meteorologists who may be coming out, maybe frustrated by the job market?
Oh gosh. The meteorology job market has really gotten competitive, and I'm not, obviously I don't have a ton of experience in other fields, but it just seems like from what I've heard from other people or friends in college that our field is one of the more highly competitive out there. I don't know. I would definitely try multiple sectors in meteorology before you pick one. Like I said, I did the broadcast side, I did the National Weather Service side, ended up at private weather consulting. So, all of them were great experiences, but just give yourself the option, the experience in those sectors before you make a final decision.
Hey Beth, you're getting married, right?
I don't have a date yet, but yes.
Troy and I are wedding singers, and I'm just saying
Please
Troy, I'm trying to
run,
get us
Beth.
Oh
Run
my
for your
gosh.
life.
I'm
James,
trying to get us a gig.
Do you remember we actually Skyped in like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago for one of my research projects in college?
I think you were in school back then.
Or wait, was it when I was in high school? Or was it when I was in college?
No, I think it was college. I think it was college. Yeah.
I can't remember now. It's
so it's
terrible.
all worked out. So,
well,
so where do you want to be?
He can Skype your wedding if you need him to, Jen.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Troy and I, we will sing via Skype or Zoom. So
okay.
Run, Beth.
So where do you want to be in 10 years? I love to ask young people this. Where do you want to be in your career in meteorology in 10 years?
Hopefully still doing private weather consulting. We kind of, we get to do our own thing, but we want our company to grow, but we don't actually want to be like an extremely large company. We want to be able to keep a close enough like client base that we like know them personally and their locations. And, we want to have the strong relationship still. So we don't want to actually grow into a huge company, which is weird to say maybe. But yeah, keep doing this. It allows us to travel. We take our work on the road and travel the country a lot and storm chasing and just other travel. So it allows us to do a lot and we really enjoy it.
But again, I think a lot of young people that listen to this show that are trying to figure out careers need to hear this, because they hear, Noaa and the National Weather Service, and then they hear, broadcast, but there's a lot more to it than that. And I think small business like this is outstanding. And
there's a lot of small weather consulting businesses out there, especially nowadays. But yeah, most people think, when you tell them we're meteorologists, they're like, oh, you must be on TV somewhere. No, not necessarily.
What channel are you on?
Exactly. So then you have to go through and tell them, well, no, I actually, I work from, I've got a few screens behind me there. That's where I primarily work out of. And so, yeah, I don't know.
Do you do any forensic work, like with attorneys and things like that?
We have. We haven't done like physical court appearances, but we've prepared the reports for the attorneys to take into the courtrooms. Primarily, they've been actually snow and ice related, not just because, probably because of our client base is probably 75% snow removal. But they get, we've had them come to us and say, hey, one of our employees said that he slipped and fell at this property on this day. There's no footage of it. He didn't mention it at the time, blah, blah, blah. And we went back, looked at the forensic data for that. It hadn't snowed in like 3 days there. The temperatures were in the 60s and had been for 2 days. None of the cameras around there showed any kind of snow or anything like that. So we put it together in a thick report for them, and they took it to court with them and sent us a big thank you later. I mean, I'm sure apparently it worked out for them. So, but yeah, we do that kind of stuff. And a lot of our forensic data is actually going back to like snow and ice storms or even flooding events. Like some of our sports venues, we've talked to them before. If they get X amount of rain and they have people parking in grass, they have to, if people get stuck, they have to like pay for it if it's like their property at a certain amount or something like that. So yeah, the forecasting is only half of it for us, because after every single snow event, ice event, whatever, we are providing, if they, kind of include that in their package, but we are putting together these snow and ice total reports and storm summaries to send it out. So it's really only half of our job is the actual forecasting.
Oh, so plug your business. Go give it a plug.
Okay. Well, we're Thermodynamic Solutions. That's a mouthful. So we go by TDS Weather. We're all over social media as well. We service Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So again, we want to stay in the smaller region just because we have the experience that we're comfortable with here. We've been forecasting here for years, and it would be weird, like I said, I'm not a tropical meteorologist. I don't want to expand down south and be involved in a lot of that, or, in the mountains where we don't have any experience forecasting. So a lot of experience in the Midwest, and that's where we want to kind of stick with our clients and continue to service them.
There you go. All right, Bill, take her away. I got to go to Studio A.
Thank you, James. You'll be the top of the show.
Top of the show.
I'm sorry we
lost.
Cold
tonight.
It will. We're going to have a widespread frost on the pumpkin tonight.
It was 25 when I woke up this morning. Our
Well, it
coldest
was
morning
ridiculous
so
when we
far.
started the show. I looked on mine and on my GR Earth over here, and I thought I had the dew point settings because it was 43. And good Lord, it's already
looks
down
like
to 41 now. So it's gonna
I've
be a
got
chilly night here.
35 on my weather
Yeah.
station right now.
You're
So.
several hundred miles north of me. So,
Yeah.
goodness gracious. How cool has it gotten out there in Austin, Texas, Troy?
Look at the MMTS. I'm at 50.6 right now, and just a few high-level clouds overhead. Really very pleasant evening here in Austin. So
I was going to say, that's pretty nice for Austin.
I think it's sunny across most of the nation right now. Gorgeous weather right now.
Yep.
Yeah, good day to go boating tomorrow. It's a good time to start with you, Troy. What's your pick of the week?
Got a couple of them that kind of got, I'm kind of constipated with my picks of the week, so we'll let loose up all here.
We were looking for a show title, so I guess we waited pretty late to get it tonight.
And I think you saw this, Bill. I found this last week. I thought it was interesting. Found it during Zeta. Poweroutage.us. I don't know, Bill, if you saw that one or not, but
yeah,
it's
I already
really
put that one in my link page.
Yeah, it's a really nice site for looking at power outages across the U.S., and it's kept up somewhat in real time. Talked to the page author, and seemed like a real nice guy, and so it's a nice page. I passed along a couple. This is all. The rest of this is Daryl Hertzman productions from Iowa Environmental Mesonet. But what Daryl's worked on are a couple of links which we'll have available as far as weather observations, METAR data, decoded information, including 5-minute data. Daryl has really worked hard on this in the last couple of weeks. And the last one here, Bill, is one that's interesting that most people probably don't know about. We have from Goes East and Goes West, our friends up at the satellite division up at Weather Service and in Noaa. We have something called the Satellite Cloud product. It's a text product that's actually prepared once an hour, and we get one from Goes East, or get a couple of versions from Goes East and Goes West. And what it does, it supplements the ASOS and AWOS observations, especially if you're in plain language for some of the regional weather roundups. You'll see a METAR ob that says it's clear, and then you'll see in Birmingham that it says partly cloudy. And you're wondering how they get that when the airport's reporting clear. Well, they supplement it with these satellite cloud products for mid and high level clouds. And what Daryl has done now through this link I've given you, it's pretty easy to work with it, is that Daryl has given us a way we can look at the obs from the airport and look at the satellite cloud products, both from Goes East and Goes West for that airport. In a way, talking to one of the contract weather observers here in Austin today, it's sort of a grade sheet on how they're doing as far as mid and high level clouds are going. In a sense, what the satellite is seeing compared to what's being reported at some of the service level A sites. So nice little page, and Daryl has finished that work today, and I told him I'd give him a plug on that tonight. So a couple of things there that data-wise that I think are interesting.
Boy, another amazing set of picks of the week. Thank you for that. It's outstanding. So, Jen, what you got for us this week?
Well, I am sitting at 40 right now. Not as cold as last night. Gonna
40 in Flavortown, huh?
40 in Flavortown. It's gonna be dry all week. I'm fine with that. I wanted to make 2 comments to Beth. First of all, I'm highly impressed with what you guys do with the snow removal and doing those things, and that you are honing in on your skills in doing that. I dabbled because I've done radio forever, and we took on a snow removal for a few weeks, and that's all we could handle. It is hard. That is hard work. So I'm so impressed with that.
We have 6 months out of the year, our snow removal season for clients, and it is tough sometimes, 18-hour days, depending on the event and how many of our forecast areas that they're that are being affected by that storm. But then in the summer, especially on the dry stretches, once we get into the summer drought, we're done in the morning after 2 hours. We have the rest of the day to go hiking, fishing, whatever, play pickleball. So it evens out. But yeah, the winters definitely can get long when they're very active.
Yeah, that's tough. So that's really good. And also, I'm so glad to hear that you guys are going to try to do the Indiana Chaser Con next year. I had the opportunity to go twice for Tornado Talk, and I would love to come back for the 10th. So
absolutely.
You guys put on a great Chaser Con. It's fun, it's growing, and a great speaker. So
Reed is still expected to be our keynote speaker for next year for the 10th anniversary.
Right.
Take 2.
Yay.
Simon Brewer is also going to be coming. Victor
Ooh.
Gensini is going to be one of the presenters. We're kind of doing a combination of our favorite speakers from attendees from the past, and then some frequently requested speakers that we've gotten over the years too. So, and everybody's asking if Gizmo's going to be there. Reed said yes, probably. He said he wouldn't completely guarantee, but we had to throw that in a little bit.
That's right. Awesome. Well, I will be looking out for that. My pick of the week is a friend of the show, Pecos Hank, has a new video out, and this one, lightning storm over Devil's Tower. I just love to hear him talk. He has just a fabulous voice, and he talks now and shows this lightning storm, but he also talks about the history of why the peak is called Devil's Tower. So that is now on YouTube, and I have that link as my pick of the week.
That's outstanding. And you have a pretty awesome voice too, Jen. You do how many radio stations across the country, Jen?
I don't know how many stations for sure. I'm on about 65 cities, and some of them have multiple stations that we broadcast on, but it's about 65 cities now. It's from Newport, Oregon to Pensacola. So I cover the whole fruited plain.
A lot of distance. I remember when you were on the Weather Channel radio network. That's how I remember that voice. So that's awesome. Thanks. So Beth, I'm still stalling for Nick up here because he's been in a panic about this pick of the week thing. So
I think I have a good one.
All right, go for it.
I'm hoping it's not already been done though, in previous weeks. Have you heard of the website Strat Observe?
No, I don't think we've heard of that one. Have we, Troy?
I can't. What's terrible is I can't remember if it's .com or .org. I think it's .com. Stratobserve.com. One of my favorite products to look on there. It's all like polar vortex related data. So they have like time series, they have maps. One thing that they have is a 3D vortex. So it's kind of a top-down view, and it looks like a tornado that shows the expanse of the polar vortex at different levels in the atmosphere and where it shifts throughout, the GFS run or whatever model you have selected there. And it shows this literal vortex of cold air as it moves across the globe and shrinks and grows. So it's just a really neat site to monitor the stratosphere.
That's an awesome pick, and I don't think we've ever had that one, so that's great. Thank you for joining us tonight, Beth. And
thanks for having me.
Please let us know when you get the details worked out for the next ChaserCon, and we'll have you back.
Okay, perfect.
That's awesome. Nick, been really fun having you on the show tonight. We've been looking forward to it. So give us a pick of the week and anything else we want to talk about. We got the keys to this thing till 10:35 or so till Span comes back. So Troy may disagree with that.
Yeah, we're gonna adjourn this little meeting. So
let's see. I got two picks for you. One weather related, one non-weather related. If you are looking for a platform to do your atmospheric or your oceanographic research, I can highly recommend the Noaa Hurricane Hunters, also known as the Noaa Aircraft Operations Center. We've got 9 different aircraft, all of your atmospheric science needs, all of your oceanographic science needs. You can do it with an airplane. You get some great crew, present company included. And really, I just want to say again, we do a great job. Everyone at our office does. And whether it's chasing hurricanes or any kind of other research, you want Noaa on your team.
That's pretty awesome. So you get a commission off of the grant or whatever it is when it's all done.
I'm a government employee, so I will get a pension in about 40 years. That's my cut.
Well, that's so worth it.
And then my non-weather related pick of the week. I am an avid board gamer. I have probably about 45 board games of all different genres that you could think of. I recommend it's family friendly. It's called Root. It is the game of woodland might and right. And you play different woodland factions, whether it be birds or cats or foxes or whatever, vying for control over this forest. It's a great game to play with your kids. I don't have kids, but I know it's a great game for kids because it's very cute. That is my pick of the week in the non-weather world.
So did you do like my family, Nick, when the game, when the pandemic broke out, take the game pandemic off the shelf and throw it immediately in the garbage?
I have my copy of Pandemic. I've not played it during the pandemic. Just it's too real. Too real. Don't want to. I play games to escape from that kind of stuff.
Exactly. I think we got it out once, and I was like, "This thing's going in the trash." It was a little too close to home. Well, Troy, anything to bring before this august body before we close it down?
No, just great to have Beth and Nick with us tonight. I mean, what an honor, what a treat. So,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, it really was
Thanks for
fun.
having me.
Thank y'all for being here. Well, WeatherBrains is the weekly netcast. It's all about weather. We do this show on Monday nights. We've been doing it, as James said, since 2006. He said we're the oldest podcast, the weather podcast. I don't know that means necessarily we're the best weather podcast, but we certainly are the moldiest weather podcast. But we still have incredible guests every week, and tonight was no exception from that rule. But until next Monday night, when our guest is James Morrow from the National Weather Service in Blacksburg, I'm Bill Murray, and for the whole WeatherBrains gang here, as I always tell you, keep an eye to the sky because you'll always have something fun to look at. Thanks, Beth. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Y'all
Beth,
come back
Nick.
anytime.
All right.
And good luck with the storms, Nick.
Thank you.
Hurry up, get the season over with.
Yeah. We'll see if I'm playing
Bye.
next week this time.
Yeah, we'll wave at you when you're flying across Cuba there. Hopefully you won't have to make too many missions. Bye.
Nick, I'm gonna be reaching out to you on a school visit for one of my upper division class. So I warned you about that. So I'm gonna take advantage of that. So
all right, absolutely. Just let me know.
Thanks.
Awesome.
All right.
Bye,
We'll
everybody.
see y'all.
And as always, it is amazing to see that people are still here. That was fun having Nick on the show tonight. That was great. And Beth, just a really good time. So thank you guys for watching. Got power back at the house. That's good. We're back on Monday nights. That's good. Hopefully things go well with the election tomorrow and we'll get through this week. Okay, so I got to go back to Studio A. We'll see you guys.